I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a public hearing, which we invite the residents of our district, which is a very large district, to participate in any discussion ideas with reference to the discussion of our budget for the next fiscal year, which begins in July 1st. I think, probably, Aaron, if you want to, and take the board now and the order of the meeting and give us the action.
Sure. So welcome everyone. We anticipated a much larger audience. Nonetheless, we're happy to have you all here today to talk about our budget for the next fiscal year. We will give you a brief overview of the budget that we've developed over the past year or so. But before we begin that, I just want to thank my team that put a lot of work into developing this budget. It's not an easy thing to do when you design them in the right way, but my team definitely contributed a lot of time and effort towards the development of this budget. So I want to thank our agenda and in brief, we'll go over some specific details and we'll look at the general fund. And after we review the budget, we'll ask for your feedback. Or if you have any questions that were unanswered. Before we do that, I want to talk about some of our accomplishments over the last year. And I think everyone here remembers a presentation from the last fiscal year. And in that, we really emphasized the need for the planning, developing plans that can be executed over a number of years. One of the plans we developed was for our headquarters. We completed a feasibility study for our new headquarters facility, and the board authorized that we move into the pre-construction phase. And I'm happy to say that we completed that study, and we're in the process of looking for suitable sites to construct new headquarters, at which time we would then come back to the board and have an in-depth discussion as to whether or not that makes sense for our organization. We also, in the past year, did a lot of work on thinking about what the Midwest Genealogy Center is and what it could be in the years to come. So we also completed a strategic plan for a new digitization department that will sit within Midwest Genealogy Center. It's a great plan. We budgeted for staff to get that up and running. And in the coming year, I think we'll see some results in that work. The general idea there is Midwest Genealogy Center focuses solely on genealogy of our region. But we think that there's a need to digitize a lot of the content that we have and acquire new collections, to bring in a broader audience, an audience that maybe skews a little bit younger, and also an audience from Platte and Clay County. And we'll note that members from all three counties do use the Midwest Genealogy Center, but the more information that's online, and the more access they would have to this great resource we have, known as the Midwest Genealogy Center. We also talked a lot about capital maintenance. And in the last budget, we set up a fund, a pay-as-you-go fund that will support the cost of capital maintenance across the 34 locations in the coming years. We have a 10-year plan, if I'm not mistaken, to feed that fund, and I'm happy to report that we've done this. And in the coming year, you'll see some significant renovations made to a number of our facilities. You'll see a lot of work on the parking lots, and you will see the replacement of a portion of the roof of the Midwest Genealogy Center, which was listed as an area of priority in our capital study or our maintenance study, and we're happy to report that we'll be moving forward with that. We also talked a lot about the funding of under-resourced communities, and by under-resourced, I mean areas that maybe aren't served at the same level as they are in our destination locations. For example, I think the Marlboro community would be one. We also think about the Farley branch and the pantry that's there. There's a lot of demand for those services. And our rural branches also are needing some needs that could evolve. So Last year, we said that we would evaluate these areas of need and come up with recommendations of how we can enhance services in these areas. We took an innovative approach to addressing those or developing those plans. We launched the Empowerment Grant Initiative, which put a call out to staff, come together as groups and develop their own plans for these areas of need. And we got some wonderful reports back, which we're now evaluating, and we will implement a portion of them in the coming year. And you'll learn more about that, say, in the coming months. The staff did a great job of looking at these areas and one of them is Farview and our rural branches. And they have some pretty sound proposals. And I think a portion of them will materialize and turn into a real benefit for patrons. And lastly, and most importantly, without staff, the staff in this room, and the staff all across the organization, we would not be the organization that we are. And they're a magnificent group of people, and we want our wages to remain competitive, so we slightly adjusted our wage structure, keep up with cost of living and minimum wage increases. And because of that work that's done by our HR department, we're happy to report that our turnover is the lowest it's been since 2018. So that is an overview of how our planning from the previous year are turning into actual tangible results in this coming year. So we're very excited about that. And now Jeremy is going to get into the details of the budget, and I'll turn it over to him.
Yep. Flip to the next slide. Sorry. We're going too far forward. Being backwards. Very good. We'll start our presentation today with a budget calendar, sort of tell you how we got to where we are right now. The official budget process started back in March when departments submitted their budget requests to Aaron. From there, the staff worked together to ensure the budget was programmed to fund the library's priorities given our financial constraints. Since then, we've taken segments of this budget to various committees of the board for more in-depth discussions with them. You can see we've done the technology committee, the personnel committee, the building committee, and today after this meeting, the finance step. Then next week at the board's June 17th meeting, the budget will be on the agenda for consideration and adoption. In addition to the budget is the property tax levy. The levy is based on projections of assessed valuation for all three counties. The actual levy will be calculated based on certified assessed valuation that we receive from those counties later this year. Tax levy will be on the board's agenda in September for consideration and approval for the state law. Now I'll flip to the next slide. This is our budget summary. Excuse me, the total recommended budget, including all funds, is $82.11 million for revenue and $86.84 million for expenses. As you'll see in a minute, we're planning to utilize reserves in our capital fund for some of the capital expenditure. General fund, however, that. The recommended budget provides funding for staffing, materials, and operating expenses that are mentioned for all 34 of our locations and headquarters. This year's recommended budget also provides funding for pre-construction expenses for the two headquarters. Continued funding for the digitization projects, other capital needs that Aaron mentioned at the Midwest Genealogy Center. Continued funding of the capital maintenance. Continued funding for compensation. Providing funding for targeted projects to enhance services in the under-resourced communities, and all staff development day, and increased investment in community programming in all regions. Next slide. So this is a budget by fund, and it can be found on pages 30 and 31 of the recommended budget book provided. That a PDF of that budget book is also on our website. All of our governmental funds are grouped together. We've also included our internal service fund, which is our health care fund, for a big picture. Our recommended budgeted revenues in the next fiscal year, as I mentioned, are $82.11 million, which is about 1.5% higher than our projection for the current year. Our
recommended budgeted expenditures for the next fiscal year are 86.84 million, which is about 18% higher than our projection. This is predominantly due to the capital maintenance plan increases in several of our branches this year. The full 10-year pay-as-you-go plan can be found in the recommended budget on pages 35 and 36. Wages and benefits are about 4% more than the current year, as wages are recommended to increase per day. The full pay plan presented to the personnel committee earlier this year. Materials are about 2% more than the current year. The increases here address increasing demand and rising costs for electronic material, such as audio books. Programs are about 13% more than the current year. This shows the library's continuing commitment deliver quality programming to our patrons across the district. Operations are about 14% more than the current year. Some of the more significant increases from vehicle operations, other contractual services, conferences, training and travel, and building maintenance. The vehicle operations are increasing $112,000 for planned replacement of 80 vehicles. Other contractual services are increasing $211,000 with $86,000 for building cleaning, pest control, lawn care, and snow removal cost increases. The remaining $125,000 for safety expenses, including our fire alarm systems, our video surveillance systems, replacement of video cameras, and access card systems as needed throughout this year. Excuse me, the conference, travel, and training budget was increased in $211,000. This is primarily due to the Public Library Association conference, which occurs every other year, and the library planning all staff development. And finally, building maintenance is increasing around $800,000, primarily for non-capital items throughout the 34 locations. The next line is debt service. This is where we report principal and interest payments on certificates of participation that were issued in 2018 for the capital fund. Based on the debt service schedule, the recommended debt is about 12% more than last year, as the library is beginning to set aside funds for potential new debt issues for the new headquarters facility. And then lastly is capital projects. This is where we report the expenses for major capital projects. With the capital plan that remodeled 28 branches or built or relocated 6 new branches. Ending, the budget is now shifting its focus on maintenance of all of those branches that did not receive significant update during that last capital plan. The budget for next year is $7.35 million for capital maintenance, $2 million for the continuation of determining and designing the future. Next slide. This is a look at our revenues and expenditures by month on average over the past 5 years. The blue line represents revenue, the yellow line represents expenditures. So as you can see on this chart, the library has to carry a substantial cash balance because the only times revenues exceed expenditures are 3 months out of the fiscal year. The next slide is our assessed valuation levy. This chart shows assessed valuation for the district for budget years 2018-19, all the way to our projection for the current budget year 25-26. This upcoming year is a reassessment year, and we are projecting 5% growth based on the preliminary tax account estimate that we were given back in March. We'll also note that the value, as the values increase, the tax rate is decreasing. This is due to the Hancock Amendment, which requires property tax revenue to be capped at the lesser of actual growth in value, the consumer price index of 5%, whichever is less. The consumer price index for the upcoming year is 2.9%. So that is the amount we use to project revenue. Budget year. We're going to flip to the next slide. This is our actual property taxes. Collected for the same time period, fiscal year 18-19 through 23-24 are from our audit. And the amounts for 24-25 are projected as well as 25-26 for the budget. Last, we have this slide for taxpayer impacts. What we did was we looked at all of the different median values in 3 counties. We came up with a composite value of 266,000. Meaning half the homes in our district are worth more than 266,000 and half are worth less than 266,000. So on this home, we then assumed to give that value from 2021 right up in accordance to the average property valuation increase in counties. That home would now be worth $352,840, or 33% in 5 years. However, based on the library's levy, a hypothetical home would have paid $175.27 one, and in 2025, we're projecting that home to pay $207.09, which is about an 18% increase for the same 5 years, or roughly 6%. That concludes our presentation. We'll now turn it over to the public.
Let me just say one thing. I know it's not required to have a roll call, but I have a record of who was here today from the board, and so the lady later can make a roll call.
Yeah, sure. Trustee Burko, trustee Cook, trustee Bragg, here, trustee Young, trustee Lazio,
Here.
trustee Lemunion, here, trustee Pandolfi, here, trustee Step, trustee Johnson,
Here.
trustee Wilson, trustee Whitehall, and trustee Beasley.
It's not mandated we have a floor for this different reading by now the public participation. Members of the public. Comment on the proposed budget.
Yes.
Or we can meet on the road.
All right.
Yeah.
My question is, how are you taking into consideration risks around Jackson County and their turmoil still, property tax assessments, by they'll go more than a couple, 3 weeks without being back into the process going forward, or all those that are tax assessment records coming out of the last week, which they have. What that really means for 25, 26. Our guard gave you where that risk could be. They made some pretty bold statements about what could happen for some people.
Yeah, this is something that we discuss probably on a weekly basis, if not more often. The real challenge is discerning, what's being discussed in the media versus, actual official documents we receive. We believe it's most prudent to go off what we've actually physically received rather than what may be reported in the media. So, in March, Jackson County gave us a preliminary estimate of 9.5%. We base our budget at 5%, with the understanding that most likely the other 2 counties will not be that high, as closer to the adjustments. So we believe we've addressed a conservative way the value adjustment in the entire district. From an actual revenue perspective, it really would only impact the district negatively if the overall valuation increase was less than 2%. Our revenue is capped, lesser of those 3 things. Whether value goes up 5%, 25%, or 100%, you have to roll that levy back to revenue. So we believe we've addressed in a fairly conservative way valuation investment based on what's happened historically. Certainly, if things happen to change that further, we may have to evaluate that late July or for late August or so. As for now, we feel pretty good that any valuation fluctuation so severe.
Our Jackson County and plenty of time to assess the impact of the seniors program that they implemented, because all those feedbacks had to come in by December 31st. Obviously, they break all the reported that was a substantial number of people that were instead of box.
I could add, in the budget message, I speak to this, but, any plans we have for new services or investment in ongoing services, are done in a very measured way. So what you will see probably is less of ribbon cutting and, big headlines and more kind of incremental change, right? The project that I'm passionate about at MGC is wonderful, but we have to grow it responsibly, right? So, there's an investment that will be needed in building itself and equipment. We'll need to bring on new staff, but we're doing this in incremental steps to make sure that we can sustain the cost over a period of time. Replacement of the roof at MGC was initially slated to happen a few years from now. But because of rains and that sort of thing, we think that we need to move that up as a priority. So, we're very thoughtful about the photography. And I could remind everyone here, in our proposal for the new headquarters facility, we proposed a timeline, pre-construction timeline, which we're now, it's been adjusted, right? Initially, we had thought that we would identify a place to relocate to do test fits within the month of May, if I'm not mistaken. But because we're being very thoughtful about that, we've taken a little bit longer than initially anticipated, but we will have a proposal to the board. And again, not a decision to take lightly, it's intended to really have in-depth conversations about whether or not it makes sense for our organization.
I'd like to mention, I personally have got feeling at this point in time, I honestly myself, I don't know what things. And mine went down from last year. I assume people went down. Mine was so high last year, I'm sure that. Actually, this is my backyard was 1.6. Yeah, so I assumed everybody else was treated the same way. They can come down, but, I don't know what that's going to do with the levy situation and what the aggregates are when they finally are. I think it's certainly different. We have a finance committee meeting after this one. Yeah, I don't know, if we go up or down last year on the 17th. Really? I think my backyard was a problem last year. It's a 5 acre yard, not a big, most of them floodplain. No, it's just. Okay. Thank you.
Five acres, mine are built.
Floodplain, that's the issue. And I asked the young man, the floodplain, he didn't react. So I don't know.
I mean, to the extent the increase is greater than what we projected.
And here.
It's kind of hard to hear over here, so hopefully you guys are fine. I think you said your name.
Sure, this is Karen Epler. Just on the budget summary, and so just finance questions. You know, I see that our revenue is short of what the expenditures are planned at 4.7 by 4.7 million, so that's coming out of the fund balance. Talk me through that decision and kind of what the long-term strategy is there.
Sure, so, typically, when you think about revenues and expenses being in balance, it's the operating fund, the general fund, and that one is in balance. Capital funds, will ebb and flow every year. If we have a significant capital expenditure, we may save money for 3 years. So it'll go to fund balance, and in that 4th year, we'll spend the entire thing. So that would be fund balance plus revenue being equal to what we have now. And so the 10-year capital maintenance plan that we put together, is a pay-as-you-go plan. We'll never spend more than we have, meaning we won't need to borrow money to fund. And that's, of course, barring any major catastrophe. So, in the upcoming year, we have, savings in the capital fund that are being set aside for, and you see as we mentioned, other parking lot projects, HVAC projects, projects, 5 ranges that are listed in the capital.
Thank you.
Insurance that will help with some of the roof expenses, or is that kind of comes straight out of my pocket?
The roof is age-based, not damage-based, so. Just after.
Answer your question, the red insurance.
Well, I didn't realize there was a hearing today. I really did not plan to go.
Are there any other questions?
I don't really have any questions. I use the library a lot. I think the library system is great. And, I just want everyone to know that. Sharon People. Yes. I've started actually using the library more recently. I found out you have events at the different libraries. So I've been using the library to go to classes on chair yoga and to learn about more about AI. I went to a class at the Culver Library on Monday that was excellent, and I'm looking forward to going to the Culinary Center.
Yeah.
So I'm a big supporter of the library.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I hope to see more support for the library.
Thank you. Glad to hear that you enjoyed the AI class. There'll be more of that class. That was the department was formed last year, if I'm not mistaken. Has it been over a year now?
Just a little over a year.
Yeah, we have the Department of Digital Innovation, and their main charge is to experiment with new technologies and educate the public about how these new technologies affect them. So we had a Face of the Future, like author series, where authors came and spoke about various aspects of artificial intelligence and algorithms, how they affect us in our daily lives. And now we're doing this class, and it's great to hear that you've got some other.
Yeah, I'm actually an engineer, and it was very informative for me.
Yeah, there'll be more on the way. Yeah.
So, I also like the one on the James Webb Telescope, that was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. That was an excellent one, also in the Culver Library. So, I don't know if anyone This commented about that, but it was excellent, it's fun.
Can you confirm that we didn't pay you to come?
So, no, like I said.
You know what, I was just telling one of our trustees, before the meeting, last year, we had, a public hearing up in, Northland at the Levy Library. And in walked the gentleman, I would say he was maybe 25, 30 years old, workaday type fellow, you know, wearing his work boots, he had his trucker hat on, and no one knew, like, who he was and where he came from. But he stood up and he gave testimony, very similar to yours, talking about the benefit of the library and his life. It was just so wonderful, and to this day, none of us know where he came from. But it's that type of feedback, that we really appreciate, so thank you for making the effort and coming.
Okay, I come to this, library, I check books out. You know, every couple of weeks, I'm in here, getting books or returning books, and I see a lot of people in this library, using this library,
Oh, yeah.
so. Anyway,
Appreciate it, yeah.
How do you like the ingress and egress at Fulton Road?
now,
You're all happy.
people's, maps, and he shows me that there is a trip lane. If you're traveling west, he shows me that on maps, there's a trip lane into, the, library. But I keep telling him that this is wrong. He keeps insisting, no, it can't be wrong. So,
And now, that they have actually advised you to make an illegal U-turn, at one point. But here, at our next board meeting, we will talk about steps that the library is going to take to rectify this issue. And my hope is with board approval that we begin to make adjustments to the emphasis for the library. So we might see positive movement.
so I was able to, take 50 highway to, I think it's Todd George Road, take Todd George up to Colburn, and then, so I had to plan. But the first time I went there, I took a really long route to go around to get to the library, so.
Well, I think we're reaching that's, I think, a calamity where the development of the library in the city.
Okay,
Not pay attention either. Yeah.
well, when I go home today, I'm gonna tell them this, but.
Take another business.
Okay, so there's other ways.
Well, you would, city, you know, the school district property you can go on, or a church property, I do that, it's like across the lights, I'm not violating
Okay,
lights, and I trespass.
One more not, but I'm here.
I did it. I think like, choir. Oh, that's okay, very well. Anyway, just wonder, what's the strategy for managing the cost of and I don't know if digital books are under electronic resources or under books, but I see that like the budget is going down for books and down for electronic resources, maybe honestly, but, we do both ebooks and physical books. We don't seem to have too long of a wait or anything that's a problem, but I know that that's a big challenge in the number of digital copies that we have. Such, so what's the strategy there?
Susan, if you could talk a little bit about how we define electronic resources versus ebooks.
Yeah, electronic resources, actually, that line is the databases and things, that you see on the actual website. Versus the, books is ebooks and physical.
Okay.
And then AV material is DVDs, e-audio, physical audio, music, CDs. With the exception of the e-audio, we're not spending a whole lot of money on, the other three items because cars don't have CD players anymore, so we're not buying e-audio. People are streaming and not using DVDs as much. So the bulk of that line is e-audio, and that is because the cost is, continues to go up, particularly for libraries. despite, lots of effort to keep that modest, because what libraries are paying for is significantly higher than you. If you would go onto Audible or Amazon or wherever, buy an ebook, you're gonna pay a fraction of what we are. So we really look at, what is the licensing agreement with the vendor? Is it one copy, one user? Can we get simultaneous users? What does that cost? There's a lot of thought that goes into how popular the item is. We increased the budget for next year to try to get the hold times down a little bit because the average wait right now is 15 weeks. So if you want something today, it isn't gonna happen. Ebooks have leveled off a little bit. A lot of our electronic increase has been in the e-audio, so that's why we switched some of that money to try to keep it realistic expectations for customers.
And then also, your questions. The fact of the matter is, there's little we can do to influence the pricing of those categories. And it is an issue for our library and libraries. There, I think many of us, the vast majority of large library systems agree that there's a ceiling for what we can possibly spend on ebooks in the audio. And so with the board, I think and the library needs to decide what is a healthy amount of growth in these areas. Specifically, can't continue adding into that area.
To the detriment of
Yeah,
physical.
to the detriment.
Physical is still checking out too, so.
Right.
Is there any social pressure to try and, get publishing agencies in support of libraries?
Yeah, there's a ton, but
I'm sorry, is there any effective social pressure that?
that's my knowledge.
No.
Yeah, I mean,
Is the
Well,
thought,
I'll leave it
is
at
the thought that if they make it tougher on the libraries, that they'll sell more through the other avenues, or
Yeah.
people have to wait too long, right? Because
Yeah.
Americans aren't good at waiting.
Jim, can you, there's an issue with federal legislation too, like ebooks aren't considered the same as a physical book. If you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, so physical books are covered under copyright law, but ebooks are not. They are considered to be a license. And so without a change to federal law in how ebooks are classified, we don't have the same protections as libraries that we have with physical books, which is why, publishers haven't been able to charge us exorbitant amounts for physical books ever. But this model, the ebook model has opened a door for them to be able to change their pricing structure. And so a couple of states have tried to they actually haven't tried. They've passed a law within the state requiring publishers to change their practices, but those have been ruled unconstitutional because of federal copyright law. So it would require, at least the way that states have tried to address it so far, it's going to require the federal government or Congress to change copyright law to include e-materials.
Concern,
Yeah.
it's ongoing. With downward pressures on revenues, we do have to make some critical choices when it comes to how much we're allocating materials or databases or anything else.
I was gonna ask a question about the new My Turn kit that replaced Kit Keeper, and that's the, kits of books that go out to the book groups. We got some information on it last week, and I've been browsing the website. Are we gonna continue to send older titles out to other library systems? Or has that been discontinued? And if it's discontinued, was that for financial reason?
Yeah, so that would be a good example of some of the tough decisions we have to make. Our past practice was to provide, book kit support to libraries throughout the state. To do that, we needed an actual dedicated position for it. However, we are focused, by charge, we're focused primarily on people within our service area. We had to make this. We still do participate in long-term borrowing programs with the libraries, but when it comes to the book kits, we had to scale that.
Okay, so for World Cat, we would send books out to other counties and we would, they'd get books from us, we'd get books from them, but on My Turn and Kit Keeper, it was pretty much just mid-continent sending kits out.
Right.
No, okay, all right.
We would check the box. Appreciate all of your questions, and if things pop in your mind after this meeting, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to, I mean, budgets are a lot to absorb, and we're happy to answer any questions.
I think probably at this time that if there aren't any other public comments, then we'll adjourn this meeting. Hopefully within the budget process. And at 11, I assume it's 11 still, we'll have a finance meeting. Yeah.
Is there gonna be another public hearing? What's the plan for schedules for public hearings? Or are you going to each library to do this?
No, this is each library. No, this is actually one public meeting for the 3 county district. Last year.
Okay, and this is only for this year. You'll have another public hearing, probably at a different library next year. Correct. Okay,
I actually, that's one of the, sort of the plan. Yes, it's one.
okay.
Try to spread it around geographically. 3 counties that are, we're a large non-profit process. We're a very large district. All right, there's a lot of people.
But you can come to any board meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you have monthly meetings?
Yeah, it's not the public council.
Oh, okay. So you pay more attention to where the meetings are, where they're at.
Oh, 24 highway. Roughly 24 highway and 291.
Okay.
And you can watch them all on YouTube. And CP on YouTube.
Oh, am I on YouTube?
Oh, well, I don't think.
Okay.
Actually, I think you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out, maybe.
Yeah.
Now you are.
Thank you.
All right.
I just wanted to go up. I thank you all for coming out here. I mean, we are such a large county and I know so many travel. For the little distance. So we are always. You set up for a lot of people to show up and you know that we use the faithful comments to share and I appreciate you. And doing this on this one.